In a quiet park blanketed by the soft light of early morning, the world seemed untouched by chaos. The air was thick with mist, the silence broken only by the occasional rustling of leaves and the sharp bark of a lone dog. This wasn't an ordinary stray. Its fur was matted, its eyes sharp with purpose as it stood rigid beside a worn duffel bag lying on the ground. Passers-by, curious at first, were quickly deterred by the dog's unwavering focus and low, threatening growls. One jogger, braving the animal's warning, took a cautious step toward the bag, only to be met with a bark so fierce it echoed through the empty park. The jogger hesitated, stepping back, unsure of what lay within the bag to warrant such protection. A small crowd began to gather, murmuring in confusion and speculation, but no one dared approach. The dog's every movement was deliberate. It circled the bag, occasionally lying down beside it, pressing its nose gently to the fabric, letting out a soft whimper. It wasn't aggression fueling its behavior, but something deeper, something protective. The tension grew as the crowd swelled, prompting someone to call the authorities. When the police arrived, they too felt the weight of the moment. The dog watched their every move with unyielding vigilance, refusing to back down, but not attacking. As the officers exchanged uncertain glances, the question lingered in the air, heavy and unspoken. What could possibly be inside the bag? The police approached cautiously, their boots crunching softly on the gravel path as they closed in on the scene. The dog stood its ground, ears perked and body tense, letting out a low growl that warned them not to come any closer. One officer held out a hand, speaking in a calm, steady tone in an attempt to soothe the animal. The crowd watched in hushed anticipation, the tension so thick it was almost tangible. The officer stepped closer, inch by inch, and the dog barked sharply, baring its teeth before retreating slightly, but never leaving the bag's side. "Easy, boy," the officer murmured, his voice careful and deliberate. The dog's growls softened, but didn't stop. It was clear this wasn't an ordinary situation. One officer motioned for a colleague to grab a piece of food from their cruiser, hoping to distract the dog long enough to inspect the bag. A sandwich was tossed a few feet away, but the dog barely glanced at it, its focus unbroken. It wasn't hunger that kept the animal rooted to the spot. It was something far more profound. After a few tense minutes, the officers managed to edge closer. The dog, though still wary, seemed to understand their intent, its growls fading into soft whimpers. Finally, one officer crouched down, hands trembling slightly as he unzipped the duffel bag. The crowd held its breath, their eyes wide with expectation. As the zipper moved, the sound of faint, muffled crying pierced the air. The officer froze for a moment, exchanging a stunned look with his partner. Carefully, he pulled the bag open, revealing what no one could have expected. A tiny baby, swaddled in a thin blanket, its face red from crying but alive. Gasps erupted from the crowd, some covering their mouths in shock, others stepping back as they tried to process what they were seeing. The officer gently lifted the baby, cradling it in his arms, his face a mixture of relief and disbelief. The dog's growling stopped completely, replaced by a low whine as it sniffed at the baby, its body visibly relaxing for the first time. It wasn't guarding an object, it was protecting a life. The realization hit everyone at once, and for a moment, there was only silence, broken only by the baby's faint cries and the soft murmur of the astonished crowd. As the officers cradled the baby, their initial shock slowly gave way to action. One officer immediately radioed for an ambulance, requesting emergency medical assistance for the infant. The other officer gently spoke to the dog, trying to calm it down, but the animal remained focused, its eyes locked on the baby in the officer's arms. The dog had clearly been its protector, and now it seemed reluctant to let go of its new charge. The crowd stood in awe, some whispering in disbelief, while others tried to record the moment on their phones. It was an unimaginable sight. This stray dog, so often overlooked and left behind, had taken on the role of guardian, ensuring the baby's safety. The officer who held the baby spoke softly, trying to comfort the child, while the other surveyed the area, looking for any clues as to who might have abandoned the infant. But there was nothing. No sign of a mother or anyone else nearby, just the bag, the dog, and the baby. The ambulance arrived within minutes, its sirens piercing the air. Paramedics rushed out, immediately tending to the baby, checking for signs of distress. They confirmed that the child was cold, hungry, but otherwise unharmed. One of the paramedics remarked on how fortunate the baby was to be found so quickly, especially in such an unusual circumstance. As they carefully placed the baby into the ambulance, the dog stood up, following them to the vehicle's door. The officer who had been holding the baby leaned down and patted the dog gently, recognizing the loyalty it had shown. "We'll take care of him," the officer assured, his voice gentle. But the dog wasn't convinced. It lingered for a moment longer, watching the ambulance drive away, before finally turning and trotting off down the path, its mission seemingly complete. As the situation began to settle, the officers and the onlookers were left to reflect on the astonishing turn of events. What could have led to this moment? Why was the baby left alone in the park, and how had the dog known to protect it? The questions lingered in the air, unanswered for now, as the community came together in shared wonder at the bond between the animal and the child. As the baby was taken to the hospital for further care, the police began piecing together the events that had unfolded. Their first priority was to ensure the infant's well-being, but the mystery of how the baby had ended up in the park and why the dog had been so protective hung in the air. The officers spoke with the paramedics and gathered statements from witnesses, but no one could provide any answers. The baby had appeared out of nowhere, and the dog had shown no sign of aggression, only devotion. Meanwhile, the news of the baby's discovery spread quickly, with reports of the heroic dog protecting the child circulating through social media and local news outlets. It wasn't long before the dog's story gained widespread attention. Many local residents began to speculate about the dog's past. Could it have been abandoned itself? Did it recognize something in the baby that led it to protect it so fiercely? While the dog's past remained a mystery, the police were focused on finding the baby's parents. They launched an investigation into the infant's abandonment, canvassing the area for any clues or potential witnesses who might have seen something. But as days passed and no leads emerged, it became clear that this case was more than just an unfortunate incident. It was a testament to the extraordinary nature of the bond between animals and humans. In the meantime, the dog's role in the baby's rescue was not forgotten. The local community rallied around the dog, showering it with praise and admiration. Many people came forward to offer their homes and their hearts, wanting to adopt the loyal animal. However, the dog's journey wasn't over yet. The officers who had been involved in the rescue kept a close eye on the dog, knowing it had been through a lot and might need time to adjust. They continued to monitor the situation, hoping to learn more about the dog's backstory. The bond between the dog and the baby was undeniable, and many wondered if fate had played a hand in bringing them together. Despite the unanswered questions, one thing was clear: the dog's actions had been nothing short of heroic. Its devotion to the child was a reminder of the incredible loyalty and love animals are capable of, qualities that often go unnoticed but are no less remarkable. And in this case, it had saved a life. As the investigation continued, the focus shifted to understanding more about the dog. The officers, now deeply invested in the case, worked with local shelters and veterinarians to learn about the animal's background. They discovered that the dog had been wandering the streets for months, likely abandoned by its previous owners. No microchip, no collar, and no identification had been found, leaving its past a mystery. But one thing became clear: the dog had survived on its own for quite some time, adapting to a life of solitude and survival. The more they learned about the dog's resilience, the more they were in awe of its behavior on that fateful day. It was as if the dog knew exactly what to do when it found the bag. Was it instinct, or had it been a fluke? The officers couldn't be sure, but the dog's unwavering dedication to protecting the baby seemed too extraordinary to be mere chance. Meanwhile, the baby continued to recover, gaining strength in the hospital. The community, still in shock from the discovery, rallied around the infant, offering support and prayers. The baby, whose future had seemed uncertain just days before, was now safe and surrounded by care. It was a miracle that such a young life had been saved, not just by human intervention, but by the selfless actions of a dog. In a heartfelt moment, the officers involved in the case were able to bring the dog to the hospital to reunite it with the baby, who was now stable. The moment was emotional for everyone involved. The dog, who had guarded the baby with such fierce loyalty, seemed to recognize that its role was complete. It sat quietly by the crib, its eyes watching the baby with an unspoken understanding. There was a bond between them, something that transcended words and circumstances. The reunion sparked a wave of affection for the dog. Many people began to realize that animals, especially dogs, have an incredible capacity for loyalty and empathy, qualities that often go unnoticed in a world that can be harsh and unforgiving. This dog had shown the world that loyalty could save a life. In the days that followed, the search for the baby's parents continued, but the community had already embraced the story of the dog's heroism. As for the dog, it would soon find a new home. One family, touched by the story, offered to adopt it, giving the loyal animal a second chance at life. It wasn't just any home. It was a place where the dog could find love, care, and belonging. The story of the dog and the baby left an indelible mark on the hearts of everyone who had witnessed it. It was a reminder that sometimes the smallest and most unexpected creatures can make the biggest difference, showing us all what true loyalty and courage really mean. As the days passed, the community came together, not only to support the baby, but also to honor the dog's bravery. The baby, now in stable condition, was surrounded by a team of doctors and caregivers, each of them impressed by the child's resilience. It was clear that the baby had been through a lot, but thanks to the quick response of the paramedics and the unwavering loyalty of the dog, it was now on the path to recovery. News outlets picked up the story, and soon, people across the country were learning about the incredible bond between the dog and the infant. Though the immediate danger was over, the investigation into the baby's abandonment continued. Authorities combed through the area, hoping to find any clues that would lead them to the parents. But despite their best efforts, no one came forward. The mystery of why the baby had been left alone remained unsolved, but the dog's role in the baby's survival couldn't be denied. It was a miracle that the dog had been there at the right time and had been able to protect the baby until help arrived. As for the dog, it was becoming a local hero. People in the community were so moved by its selfless actions that many offered to adopt it. But the dog wasn't just any stray. It had become a symbol of loyalty, courage, and compassion. The love and support from the community helped the dog heal, both physically and emotionally. One family in particular had been following the story closely. They had recently lost their own dog and had been looking for a new companion. After hearing about the dog's heroism, they knew they had to meet it. They visited the animal shelter where the dog was being cared for, and as soon as they saw each other, it was clear that a bond was forming. The dog, though initially hesitant, seemed to understand that this family would provide a home filled with love and safety. The adoption process was quick, and soon the dog was settling into its new home. It had been through so much, but now it was finally receiving the care and attention it deserved. The family, grateful for the dog's loyalty, promised to offer it the best life possible. Meanwhile, the baby continued to thrive in its foster home. The community had rallied around the child, ensuring it would grow up surrounded by love, care, and support. While the search for the parents was still ongoing, the child's future was brighter than it had ever seemed before. In the end, the story of the dog and the baby was one of survival, hope, and the unbreakable bond between humans and animals. It reminded everyone that even in the darkest moments, there are acts of kindness and courage that can change lives forever. And for the dog, it was a well-deserved second chance at life, one that would be filled with love, gratitude, and a family that would never let it down. As the story of the baby's miraculous rescue continued to unfold, the police intensified their investigation into the infant's abandonment. Officers canvassed the neighborhood, spoke to local businesses, and reviewed security footage from nearby areas, hoping to find any clue that could lead them to the baby's parents. The case had caught the attention of the media, and soon the entire community was waiting for answers. But despite their efforts, the mystery deepened. No one seemed to know anything about the baby, and no one had seen anything unusual in the park that morning. The situation seemed all the more tragic with every passing day, as the baby's true story remained a haunting unknown. Despite the heartache surrounding the abandonment, the community's response had been nothing short of remarkable. In the midst of uncertainty, there was a wave of kindness and compassion. The baby's health continued to improve, and the people who came forward to offer their help were a testament to the goodness that still existed in the world. The police, too, were determined to get to the bottom of the case, though they couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude for the dog that had played such a pivotal role in the baby's survival. The loyalty displayed by the dog had captured the hearts of everyone who had heard the story. What had started as a small, seemingly insignificant event, just another stray dog guarding a bag, had turned into an extraordinary tale of survival, loyalty, and compassion. The dog's instincts had saved a life, and now the animal's story was spreading far beyond the small town. People from all over the country reached out, sharing their admiration for the dog's actions and offering their support. Even though the search for the parents was still ongoing, the focus of the community had shifted. People had begun to rally around the dog, celebrating its courage and the incredible bond it had formed with the baby. It was a reminder of the power of loyalty and how, sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness could have the greatest impact. In the days that followed, the police received no new leads, but the community's resolve only grew stronger. They refused to let the dog's heroism be overshadowed by the unanswered questions. Instead, they honored the incredible bond between the animal and the child, knowing that no matter the outcome of the investigation, one thing was clear: the dog had saved the baby's life, and for that, it would always be remembered as a hero. The search for the baby's parents may have continued in the background, but for now, the focus was on the future, on the dog's new home, the baby's recovery, and the sense of unity that had emerged in a time of uncertainty. It was a reminder that, even in the darkest moments, hope could still shine through. As time passed, the story of the dog's incredible loyalty continued to capture the hearts of everyone who had followed the events. The dog, now safely in its new home, was adjusting to a life filled with love and attention. It was no longer the stray wandering the streets, fighting to survive. Instead, it was a cherished member of a family, experiencing the kindness it had so often been denied in the past. The bond between the dog and its new family grew stronger with each passing day. They were dedicated to giving the dog a life full of comfort, and it quickly became clear that the dog had found its place. Meanwhile, the baby, who had been so close to tragedy, continued to thrive in the care of its foster family. Although the search for the parents remained open, the child's future had shifted from uncertainty to hope. The love and support from the community ensured that the baby would have the chance to grow up in a safe, nurturing environment. For the baby, the future had never seemed brighter. The story of the dog's heroic actions continued to spread. People who had heard about its loyalty felt inspired by the incredible bond that had formed between the animal and the infant. As news outlets continued to report on the rescue, more and more people reached out to offer support for both the dog and the baby. The kindness and generosity of strangers had become an overwhelming force, bringing the community together in ways no one had expected. Although the mystery of the baby's abandonment remained unsolved, the focus shifted to the positive impact that this story had had on so many lives. The dog's actions had sparked a wave of kindness that spread far beyond the small town where the events had unfolded. It was a reminder of the power of loyalty and how acts of compassion, no matter how small, could change lives. As for the dog, it would forever be remembered as the animal that saved a life. Its journey from stray to hero had inspired countless others to look at animals in a new light, recognizing their capacity for love and selflessness. The dog's story was no longer just a local legend. It had become a symbol of hope, a reminder that sometimes the most unexpected heroes can make the biggest difference. And for the dog, the future held nothing but happiness, surrounded by a family that would love and protect it, just as it had done for the baby. The baby's story, too, was one of new beginnings. Although the search for the parents continued, the love from the community had ensured that the baby would grow up in a world where kindness prevailed. The impact of this story, of the dog's loyalty and the community's unwavering support, would be felt for years to come, a lasting legacy of hope, compassion, and the extraordinary bonds that can form between humans and animals. As time went on, the mystery of the baby's abandonment remained unresolved, but the community's focus had shifted towards something far more powerful, the extraordinary bond that had been formed between the dog and the infant. Though the authorities continued their investigation into the baby's origins, the story had taken on a life of its own. People from around the country reached out to learn more, offering donations, support, and heartfelt messages of admiration for the dog's heroism. The dog, now living in a loving home, had become a symbol of unwavering loyalty and courage. Its transformation from a stray animal fighting to survive on the streets to a hero with a family that adored it was nothing short of remarkable. The dog's new family was committed to providing it with the best life possible, ensuring it would never experience the pain of abandonment again. It was clear that the dog had found its forever home, a place where it could feel safe, loved, and cherished. For the baby, the community's support had created a foundation of hope. The infant, once at the center of an unimaginable crisis, was now growing stronger every day in the care of its new foster family. Though the search for the parents was still ongoing, the baby's future was no longer clouded with uncertainty. With each passing day, the love and care surrounding the baby only grew stronger, and it was clear that the child would have every opportunity to thrive. The media continued to follow the story, bringing attention to both the dog's incredible act of protection and the baby's recovery. Local news outlets and social media platforms celebrated the dog's selflessness, sharing the story far and wide. It wasn't just a local phenomenon anymore. It was a symbol of hope that resonated with people everywhere. Many shared stories of their own pets, celebrating the bond between humans and animals, and the unique ways animals can show loyalty and love. Though the investigation into the baby's parents had yet to produce results, the community remained united in its support for both the dog and the child. The town had come together in a way that no one had ever expected, proving that even in the face of uncertainty, kindness and compassion could make a world of difference. The story had become one of healing, not just for the baby, but for everyone who had witnessed it. The dog's bravery had inspired people to reflect on the importance of loyalty, kindness, and the powerful connection between animals and humans. It reminded everyone that in times of crisis, sometimes the smallest creatures can have the biggest impact. As the dog settled into its new life and the baby continued to grow, the story of their miraculous connection lived on. It had started as a mystery, a moment of fear and confusion, but it had evolved into something far greater, a testament to the resilience of life, the power of loyalty, and the unspoken bonds that can form when we least expect it. In the end, it was a reminder that no matter the challenges we face, there is always hope, and sometimes that hope comes in the most unexpected forms.